Hey everyone, good afternoon, and welcome to our latest episode of Lead Your Movement. I'm Angelique Rewers, CEO and founder of The Corporate Agent, where we are the leading experts in helping experts to win high paying corporate clients. And this is our weekly show where each week we interview business leaders who are using their businesses and organizations in order to drive positive change in the world. But this is a special episode today. I am taking a much needed vacation, whatever in the world taking a vacation means in the COVID world. But I am taking some time off, but we didn't want to leave you hanging this week. So, what we decided to do was dedicate this episode to all the parents in our community who are also business owners and entrepreneurs and who have the looming school year just weeks away. And depending on where in the world you are, where in the United States you are, what that's going to look like for you is going to probably change a lot over the course of the school year. It's going to be different depending on what part of the country you're in, whether you homeschool, whether you're in public school, whether you're in private school, how old your kids are, if they're little ones or if they're more sort of self-sufficient high school age kids. So, it's a mixed bag, I think, for all of us parents out there. And as I've been sort of looking at some of the articles that have been out there, talking to business owners and entrepreneurs about how to balance their business with having their kids home from school, it sort of has left me as a parent of twins, which I'll talk about here in a second, feeling a little wanting more substance, wanting more strategies, not really just being talked to in a patronizing tone of make sure you're leaving time for yourself and you're not putting too much pressure on yourself. Now, don't get me wrong, I completely agree with both of those statements, 1,000%. No issue with those statements. It's just that alone is not going to get us through the next year that's in front of us. Maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's the entire school year. We have no idea at this point in time. But what we do know is that we need to make sure our kids are successful and we need to keep our businesses strong. We need to keep our businesses thriving. The stronger your business, the better your cash flow and your profitability, the more choices you have, the more freedom you have, the more help you can hire. You can decide if you are bringing in a private tutor in the evenings. You can choose not to work with clients that are driving you insane and adding an unnecessary level of stress to your life when your business is strong. So we want to keep that strong, and we also want to be realistic, because the fact is when you have kids, you're dealing with a lot of challenges in terms of them schooling from home online. It's not natural for them. It's going to, for me personally, my kids, just to give you guys some context, my kids, if you're watching this, my kids are 11 years old. They just turned 11. They're twins, but they're in two different grades. Based on the speed at which they were developing, we have them in two different grades. And at the end of last year, when school was moved online, it was really challenging. The teachers really did not have it figured out. The school did not have it figured out. It seemed like every week they were changing something. We had school starting at two different times, an hour apart, you guys, in terms of when our one child would go to class versus the other child, which means the end of the day was different. They were having lunch at two different times, which means we had to stop to make lunch twice. And they're both at an age where they're, okay with the computer, but the homework and the task management system was so complicated that my husband and I could not figure it out ourselves. And I'm obviously a pretty capable woman, and my husband's a very smart man. And we could not figure out what the assignments were, when they were due, what was turned in. And it was just a tremendous amount of stress for both of us. So we're hoping things are a little smoother this fall, but we're in South Florida. We're in a hot spot. So even if our kids are back in the classroom, we have to be prepared that at any point in time, they could be moved back to an online classroom situation, because we are really, for those of you outside the United States, South Florida is really in the top 4 states here in the United States in terms of number of cases, and the hospitals being filled. And so we're dealing with this too. So I've made a list of all the things that I'm working through in order to prepare our household and the business in order for it to be successful, for me to do my best not to lose my sanity in the coming year. And I wanted to share these things with you as well. So I'm going to share with you 12 tips today. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, so you might want to have a pen and paper handy, and share these with you. Some of these you may have heard before, but you haven't actually done them. So I'm going to include them here for you today, because my biggest concern is that you're not actually doing it, and we're really in a place right now where we have to take action on some of the things that we know are going to help us. And I'm going to leave the wellness discussions and the mindfulness discussions, the meditation discussions. I'm going to leave all of that to the experts on mindfulness, to the experts on meditation. And I'm going to do what we do best here at the Corporate Agent, and that is help you build a strong business, a real business, a business that is not 1,000% dependent on you working and you having to do everything in the company, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to go ahead and dive in with these 12 strategies, and I'd love to still have you comment, especially if you're watching this on YouTube or on our blog. Leave me your comments and your questions below, and I'll be sure to hit them in a future episode or even in a blog post dedicated to the question that you submit. So be sure to let us know what's on your mind as well. All right, you guys, here we go. All right, so strategy number 1 is to reprioritize your marketing and business development efforts. You need to turn it upside down. What we see really for the last 10 years, and this has not changed, that folks coming into our community, small business owners that we're working with, when we ask them to show us exactly, like, show me exactly what you've done over the last 2, 3 to 4 weeks in order to grow your business and get clients in the door. Like, lay out all the tasks you've done, show me everything that has happened. And what is absolutely universal, over 98% of the people who show us what they've done have either worked on their website, edited their LinkedIn, wrote an article either for LinkedIn or their blog, put out a newsletter, created some free report, done something that is so far removed from actually getting a conversation with a highly qualified, ready now prospect. And so you don't have time for any of that at this point in time. If you haven't created a free report, if you have a blog, if you have a newsletter, if you feel this sort of sense of guilt and obligation to be putting out nonstop content, and you don't already have a full pipeline and you don't have a team that's helping you to churn out that machine of content, then now would be the time to flip your priorities and only do that stuff when and if you really have the time to do it. Where your priorities need to be right now, you guys, is on having conversations with real decision makers that can buy the services and expertise that your company offers. That means spending your marketing time sending emails to set up meetings, picking up the phone to reactivate people in your Rolodex. I'm going to use the word Rolodex. I know that dates me, you guys. Picking up the phone, activate people in the Rolodex, asking for strategic introductions, reaching out to companies to introduce yourself. You need, at this point in time, to keep your business strong, you need a minimum of 2 conversations a week with prospects. This is what exactly, I'm telling you exactly what we teach our clients how to do in our Velocity program. It's 2 conversations a week, and you're not done with your business development efforts until you set up those meetings. And I promise you, the content is not getting you those meetings. It's direct phone calls, it's direct emails, it's actually engaging with people. That's got to be your priority. If you're a parent and your kids are going to be in school from home, or it's just going to be a hybrid model, you don't have time for that other stuff right now. unless you have a team to support you. You've got to put your focus on getting to conversations that are going to put revenue in the bank for you so that your business is strong and so that you have options and freedom. Okay. That's number one. Number two is you have to automate everything. You guys, automate everything. A lot of people have done this in their business life, but they haven't necessarily done it in their personal life. And if you saw how many things were automated in my life, we know the FedEx and UPS and post office guys who work in our neighborhood because they're at our house every day. Anything I can have delivered shows up at my doorstep on autopilot. Prescriptions, autopilot. Dry cleaning, pickup and delivery, autopilot. Bill pay, autopilot. Invoices getting paid, payroll, automated. Anything that I can do on my task list, my first question is, can I set that to autopilot so I don't have to do it? And I'm ruthless about it. Back in the day, early on in my business, and it's sort of interesting. Somebody said to me once this term of entrepreneurial maturity, and it's how you think about things. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons that certain people grow and others don't, is that entrepreneurial maturity. I used to fall prey to the belief that if something only took a few minutes, then it wasn't that big of a deal. The problem was the things that only took a few minutes were actually eating up my days, my weeks, my months. And so even now with my team, I'm always saying, like, every last thing that I don't have to do, if I don't have to, move something into a Word document, if I don't have to go back and fix, typos and simple things, that adds up for me at the end of the week to focus on the things that I really need to focus on. So the same goes with automation. The same goes with everything in your household. If you can have it delivered, if you can have it set to repeat so you don't even have to think about it, that's going to add up to almost most of our clients when they go through their life and they do this, they're able to pick up an entire day in the month by automating. And that might not sound like a big deal, but if you sell workshops, for example, to companies at, let's say, $5,000, $7,500, that's a pretty nice day. If you spending one day doing business development could land a $50,000 or $100,000 or $1 million client, that one day is kind of important, you guys, right? When you think about it that way. So number two, automate everything ruthlessly. Do not, even if you pay a couple of extra dollars to have your prescriptions delivered or your dry cleaning delivered, that's nothing. That is peanuts compared to if you do the first thing I'm asking you to do in terms of where you're putting your business development time, peanuts. Okay. So that's number two. Got really dark in here. Can you guys see that? We're in South Florida. It's storm season. It's like super dark outside. The rain is pouring right now. So hopefully lightning doesn't strike, because sometimes I jump out of my skin, which would be pretty funny to have in this episode. Strategy number three, block your calendar. Now, this is the one, I know people have told you to do this before. This is a tried and true habit of highly successful individuals, is they block their calendar. Yet over 95%, without question, I could almost say 99.9% of small business owners that come into our community here at the Corporate Agent have not blocked their calendar. This is no longer an option. This is no longer, I really know I should do that. If you have kids that are starting school in the fall and we're living through this pandemic right now, your calendar, you're going to live and die. The success of your business and your sanity are going to live and die by your calendar. Breakfast time in the morning, getting the kids ready for school in the morning, that first 15 minutes before they have to log online or get to class or whatever it is, needs to be blocked out. If they're going to be home and you have to take care of their lunch, that needs to be blocked out. Their pickup time from school has to be blocked out. If there are some days that they're going to be doing all online teacher guided, that should be on your calendar, because that's probably when you're going to be able to take phone calls. If they are going to be working alone, sort of self-study, which some of these schools are doing self-study a few days a week, that better be on your calendar. Homework time, dinner time, all of it has to be on the calendar. And by the way, speaking of dinner time, this really, if you can swing it, this is the time to do whatever you can to get, meal prep done for you, food delivered. I've switched my kind of food box a few times, but anything you can do to even speed up mealtime is going to be huge, you guys. But you're going to have to live and die by your calendar. That also means deciding with your partner, if you have a significant other, if you have a spouse, etc., when are they going to make themselves available for phone calls? When are you going to make yourself available for phone calls? And you probably, my husband and I, we have to sit down with our laptops next to each other and say, okay, I'm having my coaching calls or consulting calls with my clients here. So I need you not on calls then. And then I will not be on calls here and you be on calls, because we can't both be on a call, because now what's going to happen? We're going to kill each other when the kids really need something. And neither one of us is going to want to get off the phone to have to go deal with that. It's going to cause conflict. So sit down, work it all out on the calendar. And you might, guys, have to look at changing some of your office hours. You might have to look at saying, am I going to try to get something done in the evening after the kids are down to bed, or in the morning? So you've got to be strategic about it. Also, harass the teachers and the school to give you a calendar of back to school nights, parent teacher conferences, holidays that the kids don't even have school. The fall is full of holidays, right? So you've got to make sure that's all blocked on your calendar, which leads me to strategy number 4, which is you may need to adjust your company's official working hours. So you may need to tell clients that your offices are now open from 10 a.m. to 2 and from 7 to 9, or from 8 to 10 and 2 to 4, or 7 to 3, or not 11 to 5, whatever it is. You need to adjust those working hours to what's going to work for you. And it might mean that you're even on a 3-day work schedule, that if your kids are doing self-study on Tuesdays and Thursdays, those days and times need to be blocked out. Put it on your website. If you have a Google business listing, put it on there, put it on the bottom of your emails, set up an automated outgoing responder on your email that says what your response times are and when you're available, when you're not available. And get used to using that do not disturb function on your text messages and your phone as well. So once you do your calendar, then you can adjust your public facing working hours out to the marketplace to reflect what's on your calendar, right? Strategy number 5 is to raise your prices and raise your red velvet rope simultaneously. Okay. So when you are in a situation where you have fewer hours that you can work in business, then you have to more tightly guard that incredible asset of billable time that you now have available. You have less time available. This is a little bit of a supply and a demand here. If you think about it in the most basic terms, we're talking about supply and demand. But once you block your calendar and you adjust those office hours that you have, I promise you, you're going to be shocked when you start putting in getting the kids ready for school in the morning and doing their homework and having lunch with them in the afternoon, and taking care of parent teacher conferences and special projects time. Don't forget, your kids are going to have special projects, so that better go in that calendar too, right? By the time you do all of those things, you're going to have less time available, which means you need to raise your fees. You need to raise the rates that you are charging your clients to reflect the fact that there is now less supply available in your business. This is the time to raise rates, not to be giving discounts. Every hour, every client that you work with, that is very precious time that you are taking out of your availability to dedicate to that client. The last thing that you need to be working with are bargain shoppers right now. It might seem counterintuitive, and yet it's exactly what you need to do to keep your business strong. Just like the red velvet rope. The red velvet rope is, which clients are you allowing to come into your business? Which clients are you agreeing to work with? Now is not the time to make decisions about which clients you work with from a fear-based place. Now is the time to really set a standard in your business. Your sanity and your business success is all going to be dependent upon having a client base that you enjoy working with It's a collaborative relationship, open lines of communication. They're not creating scope creep on you. They're not stepping over boundaries with you. These are clients that respect working with you, they value you. And so it's not a constant drain on your sanity, on your energy. It's not driving your blood pressure up. Now is not the time to do that. So raise those rates because you're going to have less time available in your business, and simultaneously raise that red velvet rope in terms of which clients you let through. When you have a prospect on the line, you're having a meeting with a prospect, you should be interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. And for those of you who are watching this episode who are in our Velocity Infinity community, you guys have a list of those red velvet rope questions as part of our framework that we teach you of how do you evaluate those clients and make sure they're going to be a fantastic client to work with. So if you're in our Velocity Infinity community, make sure now is the time to go back and really review that document. The next strategy, strategy number 6, is to create a minimum revenue level that you will even consider in terms of working with a new client. And what I mean by this is you should not at this point take on clients that are only going to say spend $3,000 with you or $5,000 with you or $300 with you or $500 with you. You really want to make sure that the minimum investment to start working with you is maybe 15,000, 25,000, 50,000, 100,000, 500,000, depending on where your business level is. You know, we have people in our community here at the Corporate Agent that are just getting started in their business, all the way up to those who are running multi-million dollar, even 8, 9 figure plus businesses. So it depends on your business what that minimum revenue is. But here's the thing, whether a client is spending $1,000 with you or they're spending $50,000 with you, the administrative part of working with a client is almost the same from the perspective of you have to have a contract in place with them. You have to schedule calls with them. You have to communicate with them over email. You have to collect payment from them. You have to make sure that they have therefore been billed. You've got to add them to your client list. You have to deal with customer service issues. So you don't have, when we're in the situation that the world is in now, where we are just getting pulled in every direction, you can't run around selling $1,000 here and $5,000 here and $500 there and $7,500 here. You have to work in bigger revenue increments and have those clients for a longer period of time. So you're not creating this constant churn in your business, which is very expensive and very laborious and time consuming to just churn through customers, right? It's actually one of the reasons that I started the business, The Corporate Agent. One of the reasons that have been an advocate for over a decade now for small business owners to have corporate clients, because it's much easier with a corporate client, whether it's a big, small enterprise, a mid-market company, a college, a university, a major corporation, whatever. It is much easier to set that expectation with them the first time they reach out to you and say, listen, I just want you to know that the investment to get started working with us when we first work with a client starts at $25,000 and goes up from there. You can anchor, that's called anchoring, and you can actually anchor that revenue figure with your prospects right off the bat. So set that minimum number. One of our favorite things to hear our Velocity clients say is they'll say things like, I don't even get out of bed anymore for less than $30,000. So you want to think about that. If you are going to take on a client, you're going to go through the hassle of getting to know the client, onboarding them, billing them, dealing with the contracts, all of that. There should be a minimum amount. So whatever you are thinking that number should be, you probably need to multiply it by 3 to 5 times because you're probably thinking too small. So raise your prices. Strategy number 5. Strategy number 6, create that minimum revenue level. Anchor that right away out of the gate with your new prospects. I promise you, you're not charging enough for one thing. And number 2, you're not setting that expectation of larger opportunities from the beginning. And guess what? You get to decide that. You get to decide that because you get to decide how clients buy from you. That's your choice on how you do that as a business owner. Strategy number 7 is to double your timeline for client projects and deadlines. Double the timeline for client projects and deadlines. Whatever you used to tell your clients, if you brought on a new client and you said, like, we could have the kickoff meeting within a week, right now it's 2 weeks. If you would normally conduct stakeholder interviews or focus groups or do a series of setup meetings with new coaching clients, right now, if it was normally 2 weeks, now it's going to be 4 weeks. If you're in the marketing space, you're in the PR space, you're in the copywriting space, and it would normally take you 3 weeks to do something, now your timeline is 6 weeks. You have to double all of the timelines because you have too much on your plate that's going to be unpredictable. You need to give yourself breathing room. I think one of the most interesting things that's going to happen for people, because we watch our clients do this all the time. We watch consultants and coaches and other small business owners run around, promising all of these things and then realizing it took them longer than they anticipated. And now they're scrambling to get something over to the client. Now, add to that a school project. Add to that school getting canceled. Add to that the teacher springing something on you that you didn't know about, some parent-teacher conference, or your child being homesick, or whatever the case may be. And now you are already behind and you have this deadline and then this other thing happens. So whatever you used to say to your clients, whatever your timeline was for onboarding, for getting projects done, for turnaround time, you need to double it. Double it. And then don't fall into the trap of believing the timeline that you've doubled it. And what I mean by that is still give yourself the same amount of time that you ordinarily would have, so you have tons of cushion built in. Don't double the time, then wait to the last minute, then have a crisis happen, and then the doubling of the timeline didn't help you anyway. So don't do that to yourself, right? But you've got to double the timeline, and then you still need to kind of lie to yourself in your own project timeline, in your own internal deadline, and move that up and keep it right where it would have been ordinarily. I think for a lot of you, what's going to come out of this is that you're going to realize that you were sort of over delivering to begin with in terms of the speed at which you were delivering things to your clients, and that there was actually a lot more room in there than you thought to space things out and create a little bit more freedom and flexibility in your schedule. So I think that one's probably going to stick with you long term, which is great. Strategy number 8 is to build your bench. Build your bench. And your bench are people who help you serve your clients. They're sort of like employees for your company, except they're independent contractors. And you only bring them in to work with your clients when you have a client project. And so you're not running overhead. You're not running a salary on these people, because you're only bringing them into the game off the bench and into the basketball game, or off the bench and into the football game, whatever your favorite sport is, when you have a client opportunity that they're supporting. We have, by the way, an entire workshop, if you've ever tried to do this before, where you have bench members on your team and it hasn't worked out for you. We have an entire workshop. It's a one-day workshop that you can go through online to help you build your bench. There's a lot of problems that people run into when they build a bench. And one of them is completely overpaying the bench to begin with. And it's partly because they don't take into account that they're the ones bringing the clients to the table. They're the ones who are handling all the logistics, all the client service and client management, the overall program management. It was their marketing and sales that brought the client to the table to begin with. They're the ones who closed the deal. So most people end up paying their bench members way too much because they don't know the calculation. We even have a calculator that we give to our clients of just put in these variables and it's going to tell you exactly what to pay each of your bench members. It's part of our bench workshop. But when you have a bench, that means that instead of you having to be the chief rainmaker in your business, the one that's bringing in all the business, plus the chief project manager, plus the chief client services person that's delivering all the services to the client, you can focus on being that rainmaker, not creating a feast or famine in your business, because that's exactly what happens, especially when you are being pulled in the direction of being a homeschooling teacher, taking care of the kids, and also running your business. What's going to happen is you're only going to get to the client that's in front of you or the 2 or 3 clients you're working on. You're going to focus all your effort on that. You're going to not do anything for business development. And then when that client opportunity dries up and you finish the engagement, especially if you're not working with us and knowing how to make sure that doesn't happen and that the clients stay with you for pretty much forever, then what's going to happen is you're in a feast or famine. And now you've got a situation where you have to go out and do business development again. And you're going to be stressed. And you're already stressed because we're in the middle of a pandemic and you're having to homeschool. So it's, don't do that to yourself. Get a bench, build out the bench. You focus on continuing to bring opportunities in, learn how to pay your bench so that it's really profitable and it's great for them and it's great for you. You've already raised your prices, which is going to help a lot here as well. And now your bench can deliver 50% or more of what you're selling, which is going to free you up to keep selling, to keep marketing, to keep doing business development, to keep having those clients come in to your business. So if you don't have a bench right now, between now and September 1st, you need to build your bench. You've got to get that done. And don't think to yourself, well, I'll find the bench once I find the client opportunities. It doesn't work that way, you guys. It's the other way. You build the bench, you figure out what their expertise is, you get everything laid out. And, we'll show you how to do this in our bench workshop if that's something you want access to. But then when you're having client conversations, you're talking about your bench in those early on client conversations. So it's all part of how you're doing your business development. You're already seeing the bigger opportunities. Your mindset isn't getting in the way. You're not creating blind spots because you're not afraid that you're going to be stuck doing 100% of this client delivery yourself. So you've got to build a bench before your mind can even see the bigger opportunities. You've got to have the bench before you can even sell the bigger opportunities. So go build your bench. It doesn't cost you anything. You're not paying them unless there's an actual client opportunity that you're bringing them in to help support, all under your brand, right? Because they're your bench. They're not teaming partners. They're not strategic alliance partners. They're bench members. So it's all under your brand. Okay. That's number 8. Number 9, build flexibility into your client contracts. So I want you to pull out your standard client contract that you're using when you're bringing on a new prospect. And I want you to look and see first of all, please make sure there are cancellation fees in there and plenty of notice, because companies that you're going to be working with, obviously they too are going through a pandemic. We're going to see a lot of layoffs in the fall. People are going to freak out that we're seeing all these layoffs. It's going to happen. And we're going to get through it and the market's going to come back. And actually what's going to happen after the layoffs, about 3 months later, there's going to be a boom for consultants and coaches and small business owners, because they're going to overcut. And then about 3-4 months later, they're going to realize they have all this work that needs to be done. And they're going to turn to independent contractors. They're going to turn to consultants. They're going to turn to coaches. They're going to turn to boutique firms to help them. But what you want to do with your client contract is you want to look at your cancellation policies. You want to make sure you're covered. You want to make sure you're keeping any fees that have already been paid to you, that any final payments are made. So please, please, please work with an attorney in your state to make sure that right now your contracts have everything in them that they need to. But something else I want you to focus on with your attorney, and I'm not an attorney, so this is not legal advice. This is advisory advice in terms of you going to talk to your attorney about this. But you want to make sure that your contracts give you flexibility, the flexibility to reschedule if there's an emergency. What if you get COVID? What if a member of your family gets COVID, right? So you want to have flexibility to reschedule things, and you want to have the language in there that gives you that flexibility. You also want to make sure that it's very clear that it's not you doing the work, that it's any member of your firm doing the work with your clients, and that you utilize independent contractors and subcontractors as part of your team. You want to make sure that's in your contract. You also want to make sure that it's in your contract that if you have deliverables that are due, that there are grace periods for those deliverables. You want to make sure that flexibility is in the contract, so that if you do have to miss a deadline, they can't come back and say, well, we're not paying you because you missed this deadline or this didn't happen. You also want to be able to swap out team members at any time. So what if you do have some coaches that work from you and one of them gets sick? You need the flexibility in your contract to be able to put another team member in at a moment's notice. So you need flexibility on scheduling, you need flexibility on rescheduling, you need clear terms about cancellations, and you need wiggle room on deadlines and lead times. And you can even put in your contract that they have to meet deadlines, because how many times does your deadline get pushed because the client didn't meet their deadlines? Sometimes people who come in to do a private VIP strategy day with us are very surprised about the language in our contracts. But it is so critical that we have all the information that we need, because we do, when someone comes in to do a VIP day with us, the amount of reading that we do is insane. People come in and they're like, I cannot believe that you did all this prep work. And like, you're here with our new business plan ready to go. Like, we thought you were going to spend half the day asking us questions. We do all of that up front. But the only way that we can do that, it blows people's minds when we do this, but we have to set deadlines in our contracts. And it's like, if we don't have your materials, I think it's like 2 or 3 weeks in advance of the private VIP day. If we don't have your materials by whatever that deadline is, then I don't have time to review every document. My executive vice president, Phil Dyer, doesn't have time to review every deadline. And because of the situation we're in now, we actually added even more time to that window. And we have the ability, if someone misses that deadline, then that reschedules the strategy day. Because what'll happen if you don't put this in your contracts, you guys, is if the client misses the deadline, you're the one pulling the all-nighter. You're the one freaking out because your kid forgot to tell you that they have to build one of those exploding volcanoes or, whatever it is. You don't know how to do that. You're running out trying to get supplies from Michael's, during ridiculous, different store hours, and you're in the store social distancing and the lines wrapping around the store. And meanwhile, you're freaking out because the client didn't give you what they needed to give you by a certain date. And now you still have to meet your deadline. So you can put this stuff in your contracts. You can say, look, if you don't get us everything we need by a deadline, then that's going to push our deadline to you by equal number of dates. Or if we don't have everything we need, let's say you do DISC assessments, let's say you do Colby assessments, let's say you do predictive index, and you need all those assessments before you're able to go in and do a training. Or maybe you need focus groups. Maybe you need stakeholder interviews. Maybe you need a copy of the company's entire employee engagement survey before you could go in and do a strategy day with a client or a training or whatever it is, and they don't get it to you. Well, then the date of the strategy day needs to move, and they need to pay, I would say to you, they need to pay any rescheduling of traveling costs. Most of you right now are doing everything digitally, which is fine. That's another thing of flexibility you can put in your contracts, that, if there's something that's supposed to happen in person, that they agree in the contract up front, that should you not be able to travel for whatever reason, a restriction in your state, a restriction in their state, a restriction in your country, you being sick, them being sick, you just being afraid to go to a COVID hotspot, you need in your contract that you have 100% ability to turn anything from in-person into virtual, that the pricing's not going to change and they can't cancel it just because it's going to be virtual. This is the kind of stuff, as you're going through your calendar, as you're going through adjusting your working hours, as you're going through with your bench, I'm giving you these in order for a reason here, because I want you to be able to then get to your contract with your attorney and go, man, there's a lot of stuff we better put in here. That's going to CYA. It's going to cover my rear end so that I have all the flexibility I need given the world that we're all in right now. Right? So that's number 9. Build all the flexibility you need, dot every I, cross every T, everything I just said. Get that into your client contracts right now. You're going to thank me when the shit hits the fan, you guys. You're going to thank me that that is in your contract. All right, number 10, I really want to recommend, and I know some people are going to say, Angelique, that's nice that you can do that. I can't do that. The reason I can do some of the things I can do is because I invested in my business and I focused on what I needed to do to grow this business. You can do that too. We know that you can do that. And so if you're taking that first step that I talked about, which is not messing around rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic with your marketing, and focusing on real business development that's going to put clients into your business, you're going to give yourself a little bit of breathing room in terms of your cash flow coming into your business. One of the things I highly recommend that you do, if you do have especially kids that are about 13 years old or younger, is get a tutor. Have someone, even if it's for 1 or 2 hours a week or 30 minutes every day after school, even if it's a college kid. A lot of college kids, by the way, are actually taking the fall semester off because they don't want to spend the kind of tuition that's required and not have the college experience. So a lot of kids are opting out. They're just pausing on the fall. And there are a ton of kids out there in college who are all going to school for education to be school teachers, and they can meet with your kids virtually for a half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour every day for even homework help. It's going to be a huge, huge help to you. And come on, we all know that kids listen better to people who aren't their parents, right? We all know that the kids are, whenever we say something, our kids argue with us. If a teacher says it, if a tutor says it, it makes a big difference. And these don't necessarily, by the way, have to even be people who are coming into your home. If you're really trying to, do social distancing, you're afraid of hot spots, you don't want to put them at risk, etc. You can use Zoom, you can use Microsoft Teams, you can use Skype, you can use FaceTime, you can use those new portal things that they're selling now. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can bring a tutor in. And really, I think, especially for me, I have zero teaching abilities when it comes to children. Like, that is not my area of expertise. And I have less patience too than a lot of tutors. So it's good for the kids. It's good for you. You probably know your kids aren't getting quite as much what they need in online school as they are getting in terms of in the classroom. So giving that little extra right now, I think is going to be a really great thing. But there's tons of folks out there who would be great at doing this. Some teachers are even choosing to retire early, not go back, take sabbaticals. So the amount of folks who are out there who for $25, $35 an hour could spend some time with your kids. It's going to be money worth spent. It's going to take a huge, huge burden off of you. And if necessary, use that as your motivation to focus on business development. I know people sometimes shy away from real business development, getting to those conversations with decision makers. If that needs to be your motivation right now to bring in the revenue to cover everything you need to cover, plus have some extra in order to get a little bit of extra help in terms of your kids with their schoolwork, I think it's going to just take a huge burden off of you. And I can't recommend it enough. So tip number 11 is to hire help. And yes, you've been told to hire help before, but it's going to be more important than ever when we're moving into this fall school season. And you want to hire a little bit of help on the personal side and a little bit of help on the professional side. The good news is, because of what's happening economically and due to the pandemic, you have a lot of people coming into the workplace right now who are looking for flexible jobs. They're looking for those flexible gigs. So now's a great time for 5, 10, 15 hours a week to have that virtual assistant online, someone who can help you with your social media, or someone who can help you make sure that your clients have booked their calls, or who can find those speaking opportunities for you in 2021, or pitch having you on podcast episodes, or who can monitor your inbox and your LinkedIn, or create LinkedIn connections, or whatever it is And then, of course, on the personal side, if you can have a personal assistant, again, there are going to be a lot of college kids who are opting not to go back, or even if they are going back, they're still home and they're taking their classes virtually. And so they're going to be looking for jobs as well. So even if you have $15, $20 an hour to pick up some extra help on those things that are low value add. Couple of tips about this though, when you're hiring help. The first is create checklists. One of the reasons that it doesn't work when people hire help is because they have nothing written down. They don't have checklists or standard operating procedures, SOPs for anything. And so it feels like not only do you have to do all of this training, but you're constantly recreating the wheel. One of the things we give to our Velocity members is a checklist of how to be the CEO of your life and all the things that you need to have standard operating procedures and checklists for. But essentially, if you're going to do something more than once, you're going to do something every week or every month, there should be a checklist for it. It's going to save you a lot of time and headache when you have some help so that you're not having to constantly type out the instructions on how to do every last thing. This was something the first time I really put an SOP in place was around someone booking my travel, because I do travel a lot when we're not social distancing and everything isn't being canceled. I'm on the road all the time. And I got so tired of having to tell people, well, no, don't put me in the first, row of seats. Don't, put me on a 5 o'clock flight. I want to be on the first flight out in the morning before there are any delays. I don't care if it's at 5:30 in the morning, put me on that first flight. And so I started to document my preferences, and it made it much easier. And so now we have a shared Google Drive in our company that has every last standard operating procedure and checklist. It was not something I could sit down and build from scratch, or that my team could sit down and build from scratch. Rather, we just started making it a natural part of our business. Whenever we do something new, where's the checklist? Where's the SOP? And it's part of our team accountability agreement that we do it. And now that library just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So if there ever was an excuse or a reason, just start documenting your processes and start creating your checklists. Now is the time. And they don't have to be fancy. Some of you may not know this, but for about 2 years, I owned a franchise. One of the reasons I bought the franchise was because I had read Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth, on how to, run a business smoothly. He makes that whole argument in the book that every business should run like a franchise. Everything is documented. Everything is repeatable. That concept was brilliant to me, but I couldn't really get my head around what does that look like. So one of the benefits, or one of the things I thought was going to be a benefit of buying a franchise, was seeing inside of everything documented, everything systematized. What I really learned was everything was just a checklist. Like, standard operating procedures and repeatability literally came down to shared files in shared folders on a shared server somewhere, and a lot of checklists. Like, that's really what you're talking about. Don't overcomplicate it. Just put the checklist down. And then last but not least, tip or strategy number 12 here is to keep your pipeline full. The last thing that you need going into this school year and with all the uncertainty around it is, number one, the fear of having an empty pipeline. Number two, if a client is not the right fit for you, the financials on it aren't right, you're going to be working way too much for too little income, or they are difficult to deal with, they're too demanding, they cross boundaries, they don't respect the flexibility that you need in your business. The last thing you need to be in is the situation where you're afraid to fire that client because you have nothing else in your pipeline. So you have to focus on getting that pipeline full. And I promise you, you need somewhere between 10 and 100 times more in your pipeline than you think you do. One, we know that what we're going to see in the fall is a lot of starts and stops, right? Companies wanting to get started and maybe pausing or pulling back. not able to make that final investment with you right away, or just starting small and then building up, or having to pause things if they're going through layoffs and things. So you actually need a lot more in your pipeline right now than you have ever had in your pipeline. And there's less out there. So you really have to get focused on getting that pipeline full. I say to you with love and respect, if you are taking an approach where you just put marketing out into the world, articles, newsletters, some videos, you're filming in your car with your cell phone, doing a LinkedIn live or uploading a video. We see that all the time on LinkedIn now, right? Where everybody's got their videos from their phone in their car. Why everybody loves it in their car, I don't understand. Stop doing the videos in your cars, you guys. Do something different. But if you're in your car and you're doing that, whatever it is that you're putting out, that doesn't put revenue in your pocket. Think about how much time and energy you're putting into doing passive marketing instead of proactive business development. And if you're still doing passive marketing and you're not doing proactive business development, you've got to change it, because you need a full pipeline. So you can sleep at night, you can say no to projects that frankly can't fit into your schedule. You can say no to discounting your value out into the world. You can hold firm boundaries and not be afraid. What if this client cancels on me because I stuck to my boundary? I stuck to the timeline that we agreed to. I'm enforcing those terms in that contract that I had my attorney work with me on. So you don't want to have that fear. And that fear is all going to come from lack. And when you look at that pipeline and that pipeline is empty. If you're not doing proactive business development, by the way, and you need help doing that, please reach out to us. Seriously, set up a call with my team, and we'll talk to you about some ways that you can get the training that you need so that you know exactly where to spend your time and how to fill your calendar with conversations of real decision makers who are in a ready now or a ready soon place. So you have a pipeline that is full. And let me just add one last thing. We're huge fans of Pipe Drive, which is an online tool, very inexpensive. I think it's still under $20 a month, that you can actually see what's in your pipeline. If you can't see what's in your pipeline, exactly what opportunities you have in your pipeline and what stage they are in terms of becoming real opportunities with money in the bank, then you're in big trouble, because you can't really focus proactively on filling your pipeline if you can't even see your pipeline, right? So one of the things that we sort of really insist upon with our Velocity Infinity community is that they do, in fact, have a tool so that they can see their pipeline and focus on getting that full. All right. So those are my 12 tips, you guys, for those of you who are business owners, self-employed experts, entrepreneurs out there who do have kids and who will be juggling the sort of ultimate juggling act, I think, that any of us are really going to face as business owners, which is all the demands we had before, the demands of working through a tough economic climate, dealing with a pandemic, running our businesses, hopefully continuing to grow our businesses and do the great work that we do, and possibly also being teachers and everything else to our kids as they school from home or have these sort of hybrid models. So write down those 12 strategies. Check them off your list one by one. Just a quick programming note here before we wrap up, or maybe two programming notes. If you're watching us on YouTube, please do make sure that you subscribe to our channel so that as we put out our episodes with our amazing guests from all over the country and around the world, you don't miss out on even a single episode of Lead Your Movement. And also note that we will be back live for a live episode on Wednesday, August 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be our next live episode. But you can also catch us Wednesday with another awesome killer pre-recorded session that is going to be chock full of more strategies for you. But we will see you live when I return into another week and a half or so from a much needed vacation on Wednesday, August 19th. All right, everybody. Until then, this is Angelique from The Corporate Agent and Lead Your Movement signing off. Have a great day, everybody.